Kakadosh, Boker Or, Masechet Bava Metzia Daf Zayin Amud Aleph 77a1. We are going to be Ve'amar Rava, third line, sorry. Ve'amar Rava, Rava comes and he says, Haiman de Ogir Aguri le Davla. Somebody that's going to come, and he's going to be Socher Palim, right? He's going to get workers to come and to put water to the field. Ve'ata Mitra. Now what happens? It rains. So Pseidah the Palim, the workers are losing out. Atanara, but if it came a river, Pseidah the Balabait. Diavuluhu kipol batel. And then he has to come and he has to pay them like a poel batel, meaning he doesn't have to pay them the full wages, but he has to pay them like a poel batel. Ve'amar Rava, another halacha. So that's very interesting. So one more time. I come in and tell you, you have to come and you have to water my lawn. All of a sudden it rains. So if it rains, it's a pseidah of the poalim. They lose out. But if it's a river that comes and goes through, so then I lose out, meaning the balabait loses out, but he just has to pay them like a poel batel, not like the regular wages. The Amar Rava, also Rava says, Haiman de ogira gure le davla. You're going to get people to put water in your field. And the river comes and there's no more water. So therefore they can't do anything. So ilu avi de pasik, if it doesn't usually stop, say that the polim, the workers lose out. But iavi de pasik, if once in a while it does stop, even in mata, if the polim are from the same city, which means that they know that, so then they lose out. But if they're not from the city, that means they don't know that. So then say that the balabait, it's going to be that the balabait is going to lose out. Because basically, it all depends on what way is it seen as like a circumstances which are going to be like foreseeable circumstances or not. That's the concept behind it. Ve'amar Rava. Rava also says, Haiman da agar agor levita. Something that's going to be a socher peolim to work for him. Ushlim avita bepalgad yoman. He finished it in the middle of the day. If he's got another work which is easier, lighter than the first one, you could give it to him. Inami de kavata, or you've got another avodah also. Mafkiluhu, that you could actually command him to do it. The kashem, but if it's more difficult, lo mafkiluhu, you cannot give him to do it. That means basically, listen, they worked extra, right? They worked extra hard and they finished the job early. Listen, if you have a lighter job, you could give it to them. But if it's more difficult, no, you have to pay them, and that's it. They got off early. Says the Gemara, Amai, why? He should only give them like a poel batel. Because at the end of the day, if they worked, usually they used to work per day, but if they finish the job early, so the rest of the day, I would only give them like a poel batel. So answers the Gemara, Ki Kamar Rava, when did Rava say this? He says the sabbalim mechuza, that they carry heavy loads, that's basically that they're not going to, that if they're not going to work, they're going to become chalash. So since there's no gain that the poalim are like going to be batel, so therefore that's why you have to give them the full, their full wages. Okay, because there's no gain in the fact that they're not working. The opposite. The sabal, the more that he carries, the more that he continues being strong. So Amar more and more says, Shamin la'em et ma she'asu. Keitza, what does it mean? You're going to come, you're going to evaluate how much did they work? What did they do? Their job. How do you do that exactly? If right now the balabait has to take out 6 dinarim for other workers, you have to give them 4. But now 1 second. But what's going on then? Well, he says he's going to lose out because in the he has to now pay 6 dinarim plus 4, which is 10. Before, he only had to pay 8. So he's losing out. So says the Gemara, Kasavri Rabbanan, Yad Poel al Yonah. The rabbis hold that the Yad Poel always has the upper hand. So since he has the upper hand, that's why, right, he's actually going to come out paying 10 at the end and not instead of 8. Or they finish their job. They're going to take the other 2 slaim. Shita, obviously. What do you expect? It says, no, if they became more expensive to work. The imru poalim balabay va'azed balabay tefasinu. So they went and they told the balabay, listen, you want us, you have to pay us more. And then the balabay went and he appeased them. Ma'u the time I would have thought to say matzu amru lein. They could say kimi paisina nadaita the tafat right lana agra, which means when we were piasnu. So therefore it's like there's much kamashvalan comes teach you damalu that he says adaita de tarachna lechu ba'achila u'shtiya. This new eskem is going to be on that, right, that I'm going to work for it, right? However, though, lo iskamti meolam, right, I never agreed to come and start, adding on these things. Okay, fine. Sela, right? When we're talking about now a sela from the beginning, not a lem sela. So if it was going to be a sela, so they're going to give a sela. Says Gemara Pshita, obviously. Says Lotzicha, what are we dealing with? The zalavita meikara. She says that it became cheaper at the beginning. Agrinu b'tfei zuza. So if he went and he wanted to give them a little bit more, Then at the end, it became even more money. So he says, "V'kam betfeizuza," and then it became on the regular price, right? So he says, "Mao the time." I would have thought to say Amrule that they could tell him, "Tfeizuza martalan tfeizuza." You told us it was going to be more. Give us more. Kamash Malan comes to teach you the Hamalehu that he could tell them, when did I tell you I was going to pay you more? Right? Because at the time, I couldn't find anybody else. So what am I? But now, if you guys don't want, no problem. I could get somebody else. Meaning now that the price went down again, so therefore you can give them the cheaper price again. One more time. The value at the beginning was $10. All of a sudden it went to 15. So they asked for 15. He agreed, but then it went down to 10. He only needs to pay 10. Because basically you could tell them, listen, if you want, you could have stopped. I'm going to pay 10 anyway. Rabbi Dosa, Shamin Lahen Omer, he says, Shamin Lahen of Mashati Lasot, you're going to evaluate how much they're going to do. Shisha dinanim, you give them a shekel. You give them 2 dinarim. Kasavar, he holds that the hand of the poel is on the lower hand, meaning the worker has the lower hand, not the upper hand. Or they finish the job and then you have to take 2 slaim, obviously. Says the Gemara, the Zilavita went down in value. And the Balabai comes and he says, right, so they went and they appeased him. I would have thought, say, they could say, listen, I need Skamti to give you, right, in order that you're going to get the lower price. That we're going to do it according to the original value. But we never wanted to be muvater on it, meaning we never wanted to pay now a less value. So don't think of lowering our salary. Okay? Sela notelaim sela. What does it mean now? You're going to give them a sela. Says Gemara Pshita, obviously. He says, Amar Avunu Bered Rav Natan. Says Avunu Bered Rav Natan. Lotzicha, what are we dealing with? Deozilu inu gabe zuza meikara. He says, B'shah that they came and they were made the poalim, right? He comes and he says, it was the navodah, which the mechira the gil was going to be 8 dinarim. Sof zalavita. And at the end, when they already finished, right, it was already half of the avodah. Ma'u the tema, so I would have thought to say, Batzar zuza, Batzir zuza amritali, right? Batzir zuza yavinu luchu. At the beginning, I said that you guys are going to be willing to come and to work for less. Kamash Malan comes teach you Damaleh that he could say, when did I say you could do it less? That was the time that I wasn't for sure you were going to get more workers. And therefore, since I knew that they weren't going to be, so therefore that's what I had to pay. Hashta kimlach, but now I know I could get it for the price that I want, and therefore, right, I don't need to actually do that. Okay? Which means that I have no sibat to come and to start, putting less than that. Okay, so when I went and I said that I'm going to accept less than a dinar, it wasn't correct. So Amar Rav, so what's halacha then? So Amar Rav, halacha kerebi dosa. The halacha is like kerebi dosa, that even if the poalim, they stop in the middle of their work, they have the lower hand. So the workers have the lower hand. So says the Gemara, Omi Amar Rav Hachi, does Rav say that that's halacha? The Amar Rav says, he could have retracted in the middle of the day. The chitim, and you're going to tell me now, there's a difference between schirut and kablanut. Is there a difference between schirut and kablanut? Remember, schirut is I pay you per hour. Kablanut is I pay you per job. Doesn't matter how many hours it is. We learned in the Braita. Right? What happens if a person starts working? And then all of a sudden, somebody dies. So he's obligated to stop working. Right? Or he has chom. He's sick. In Sachiru, if he's a Sachid, right? Ein Zayin Mubet, 77b, Notelo Scharo, he gives him his salary. In Kablanhu, if he's going to be a Kablan, Notelo Kablanuto, he gives it to him. So therefore, you see from here, there's no Knas. And the same thing, whether it's going to be the Schid or you have to give it to him. Even though you can't finish off the job, what do you want? The truth is, it's force majeure. Somebody passed away, he's now in bereavement, or he's not feeling well. So it says, Mani, who is this? If you're going to tell me it's rabbis, so why did you tell me that it had to be that somebody died or you got sick? That it's an honest. Kiloan is not even without an honest. The rabbi said, the one that worker, he's always on the top. So we learn from here, right? That there's no difference between schirut and kablanut. According to the bidosa, schirut and kablanut it's the same thing. There's no difference between schirut and kablanut. So it says it's not true. We're talking about something which is going to get lost, and it's going to everybody. What does that mean? You remember we said that what if you stop the job in the middle? If you stop the job in the middle, this is going to get ruined. So if it's according to everybody, that now yadola tachtona, because you basically left them stranded. If it's a job that you just okay, fine, but you could get tomorrow, the next day, whenever it is. He'll finish off the job, no problem. Here, if he's not going to finish off the job now, that's it. There's the Gamarnu. So today we learned in the Mishnah, Kola mishanei yadola tachtuna. We said anybody that changes, his hand is going to be on the bottom. Vechola chozer bo. Anybody that retracts, also yadola tachtuna. Bishlama, I understand kola mishanei, right, is yadola tachtuna, because we go like Rabbi Yehuda. But kola chozer bo, but if you're going to retract yadola tachtuna, what is that coming to include? Is it not coming to include the poel? And therefore it's going to be like Rabbi Dosa? Because according to Chachamim, right, he always had yadola and yonah. And Rabbi Dosa is the one that says, no, yadola tachtuna. So answers the Gemara, Ela Rabbi Dosa tarte kamar. Rabbi Dosa said two different things. What does that mean? He said two different cases. Whether it's a kablan or sechir yom, they're allowed to, they retract yadam ala tachtuna. But Rav holds like Rabbi Dosa in one halacha, but he argues on Rabbi Dosa in the other halacha. And therefore, to do with the sechir yom, right, the halacha is like him, but not to do with, right, the kablan. Right? So he says, that's to do with the schir yom, he argues on Rabbi Dosa and he says that there's yadol and yunah, but in the kablan, yadol tachtona. Ibayit emor, if you want, you can answer another answer. Kol hachozer bo yadol tachtona. When you retract, you have the lower hand. Okay, so what's the case? Imagine I sold you a field for 1,000 zuz. And you gave him 200 zuz already. You give him 200, you give him down payment. If the seller is the one that's retracting, the one that's buying, he has the upper hand. That's how, if you want, you could tell him, give me my money. If you want to, give me the karka. Where's he going to collect the karka? From the yidit, from the best of the field. If it's the lokech, the purchaser that wants to retract, so the other guy has the upper hand, the seller. If he wants, he could come and tell him, take your money and get lost. That's how, if he wants, he could call him and tell him, hey, here's your money. But where's he going to give it to him? From the ziburit. So if we look at what's going on, who's retracting, who has the upper hand? Rabban Shimon Gamliel Omer Shebag says, "Melamdin otan shelo yachziru." We tell them don't retract. Keitzad, what's the case? Kotev lo, you have to write him. Ani ploni ben ploni acharti tzedek ploni ploni be'elef zuz. And Natalia, and he gave me 200 zuz. Pareni noshebo shmona, and he owes me 800 zuz. Kana, and he's going to acquire everything. Masilo etashar, and he has to give it back to him even after a few years. Meaning, we don't let them retract. We just write a loan document, and he owes him the money, and he has to pay him. Amar Mor says, Hechal Magbio, where are you going to collect it from? Minaidit, from the best of the property, right? La creme de la creme. So he says, Kasal Kadaitach, I would have thought to say, Meidit de Nechasav, from the best of the properties. Velo Yehel Balchov, you should only be like a Balchov. We learned that a Balchov, where does he take? Benonit. Ve'od Ha'ara Diav Zuze. He's giving the money. What's going on over here? Why is he taking Idit? He should take like a Balchov, which is Benonit. Samar of Nachman Bar Yitzchak says, Nachman Yitzchak, Meidit Sheba, the best part of the field, not the best fields, from the best part of the field or from the worst part of the field. Meaning we're not talking about that he's going to take from another field. From the same field, sometimes the same field has the best part of the field and the worst part of the field in the same field in itself. That's what he meant. The best or the worst part. Second answer. Ravacha bered Ravi Kamar. Ravacha, the son of Ravika, said, Afilu tema, even if you're going to tell me it is from Yidin Nechasav, the best of the fields, not this field, the fields in general. Staman de Zavinara be'alfa zuz, a person is going to pay 1,000 zuz, he had to sell his field in order to get that money. And therefore he's going to be considered an izak, because he's actually damaging him. Wherefore we learned, when you damage somebody, you have to pay from the idit. And therefore the same thing, meaning, if somebody's coming and he's buying a piece of land, right, obviously with 1,000 zuz, obviously means, right, that he had to sell other properties, right, that he had in order to get the money. So since he had to sell the other properties, you just damaged him. Because now you basically cause him to sell other properties. He lost money. Now he wants to buy. Now you're attracting up. So therefore he gets from the Yidit. You're a damager. You're a Nizak. Right? He's the one that's, you're a Mazik. He's the Nizak. He's getting damaged. And therefore you get from the Yidit. Rashbag Omer, sorry. Okay? So, yeah, Rashbag Omer. Rashbag comes and he says, Melamdinota, we teach them not to retract. How? You write down, Ani ploni ben ploni v'chule. Tama de katav liach, that's only because you wrote that. Halo katav, but if he didn't write that, he's not going to acquire it. V'atanya, we learned in a Braita, hanoten eravon lechavro, if you give a deposit to your friend, And he says, you get it. That's called like a hard deposit nowadays. That means it goes hard. If you retract, you lose it. Hechal, man. And the other one says, right? If I'm going to retract, I'm going to give you double. It's actually a good thing. Meaning, I went and I said, listen, it's going to be forgiven. He said, oh, you're going to get double. He went and he said even more. Not only it's going to be forgiven, I'm going to have to give you double. So he says, it's good. It's good conditions. Rabbi Yosef goes according to his reasoning. He says, that it does acquire it. And Rabbi Yudah no, you could only get keneged eravon. You can't get more than your eravon. Meaning the first one that says it's smachta kanya, you went and you told me you're going to give me double. You have to give me double. I was only in a smachta. I said it. You relied upon it. It's koneh. According to the second shita, no, you only get your eravon. The eravon was the money, the deposit that you gave. That's the only thing that you could get. Amar Rashbag, says Rashbag. But when one of these words, he says, only when he says you're going to my eravon will acquire the entire chefetz. But if he sold it to him and he gave him 500 zuz, right? He's going to acquire it. He gives it back. He just gives him the rest of the money after a few years. Nobody could retract. Because basically, since he gave money, right? So therefore, that's it. So says the Gemara, it's not a question. Because right now we just said that if you're giving down the payment, they say you can't retract. So he says, ha de ka'ayil v'nafik azuzeh. Here the mocher is nichnas yotze, meaning he needs the money. Ha de lo ka'ayil v'nafik azuzeh. And one is that mocher is not nichnas yotze and looking for the money all the time. And therefore, since he's coming and he's selling his field, it means that he comes out that he's going to acquire the entire field, even with a partial payment. The Amar Rava, as Rava says, if you're going to come and you're going to sell something to your friend, the ka'ayil v'nafik azuzeh, and the mocher is always coming to try to look for money, lo kani, he's not going to acquire it until he actually gives the entire amount. Lo kana ayil v'nafik, but if not, he does acquire it even with the amount that he gives him. He already acquires it. The Amar Rava, and Rava also says, if somebody's going to borrow 100 zuz from his friend, and he's paying one by one, it's going to be a payment. But he could have complained. He said, tell him, right? When you give somebody $100, it's much more difficult to spend than you're giving him one by one. You understand? So therefore, you could tell, listen, he has a taromet, he has a complaint. There was a person that he sold his chamor to his friend. And he had one zuz. And you had to sell this one zuz. So Ravashi was sitting and he was me'ayin. What's halacha? Kani lo kani? Right? Should I buy it or not buy it? So Mordechai, right? Elmaleh of Mordechai. Ravashi says of Mordechai to Ravashi, Hachi Amar Rabbi Yemi Me'agranya Mishmeh. Rava, this is what Rabbi Yemi Me'agranya said in the name of Rava. Zuza ke zuza dame v'lo kani. One din is like one dinar is like a lot of dinarim, and therefore he says just like it's not going to be acquired with one, it's not going to be acquired also the same thing with one. So Amalei Ravacha bered Rav Yosef Ravashi. I thought we said that you do acquire it, right? You do acquire it. What are you talking about? Samalei, he says titargem shmatich. You have to actually be metargem the shmua b'mocher sadeu mipnei ra'ata. You sold it because it was bad. So therefore, we're going to say that you sold it not because even if it wasn't the chuk for kesef, and therefore you're not looking after the money. You just say it was a bad investment, so you just wanted to get rid of it. So in such a case, Rava comes and he says he's going to acquire it, even though you didn't give all the money. He's acquiring the field because you wanted to get rid of it. So even if you don't need the money, it doesn't matter. You got rid of it. So if you do acquire it, even though you only gave part of the money, you acquired the entire field.